hypnosis can be used for any form of addiction, like smoking, anxiety, phobias. It aids healthy eating.
You'll get there.
Somewhere. And, sleep. And it is real. It's not a joke. It does really happen. And for anybody who's looking at courses, if they want to become a hypnotherapist, you can do a course at the Australian Academy of Hypnosis. And my very good friend, who I call the Master, as he is the Master of Hypnosis, and he's a doctor of, and has written several books that we should get on to our next episode. Ooh,
yes.
Got an itchy nose, hang on.
Uh-oh. What's that mean? You're going to kiss a fool?
Yeah.
You didn't hear that, Rick?
I need hypnotising for that. Don't scratch your nose on a podcast. So distinguish the difference between hypnotherapy and hypnosis. These are... So hypnosis is something, that you put into like a trance, blah, blah, blah. But hypnotherapy involves a certain amount of counselling, as in the word therapy. Yeah. So I've gone over all the important bits, and now I'm going to give this to the lovely Claudia, who's going to talk...
Claudia?
Claudia.
Is that your French accent?
Yes, the cuveleur. Yeah. Do you know, I've been practising that, and after about 3 or 4 glasses of wine, it had a nice slur to it.
You have to write it out phonetically like the newscasters do.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, that's a really good idea, actually. I'll get you to hold a card up.
I'll do that for you, darling.
So I'm going to ask the lovely Claudia, Claudia. Hello, Claudia. Would you mind talking about Edgar Cayce?
Oh, we'll come up to Edgar Cayce, but I did just have a few questions in relation to what you were talking about, which is actually, I find hypnosis really fascinating, and Edgar Cayce is a huge part of that world, but in relation to people using it as an alternative to a cure, obviously, when they haven't gotten anywhere else, because sometimes... and we've hit on this subject before, where the unconscious mind, especially when we've had a trauma in our life or something has happened where we do go to look for a cure. Yeah. Sometimes when we then go and look for a hypnotic solution, and we go and have a hypnotic session or whatever, we are able to then get to a level of understanding about ourselves that medicine, in relation to just a doctor looking at you and going, okay, I have a sore throat that won't go away. Here's some medicine. You come back, the sore throat's still there. Medicine, here's some more medicine. And then when you go and have a hypnotic session, you find that, just as an example, I'm just speculating here, someone who is perhaps in an abusive relationship who isn't being heard. So that fear of speaking is actually centralizing in the throat, where we speak.
As in like paralyzing the...
Correct. Yeah. So this is where the point I'm trying to make is where hypnosis can be an absolutely amazing alternative when you're not getting answers from just everyday medicine, because sometimes you just need to have that alternative. And it would be nice to think that medical practitioners are on board with using this as a viable option if they're not getting anywhere.
Oh, can I add a story to that?
Yeah.
There's a couple that were actually on the same hypnosis course as myself, and the lady was of Asian persuasion. And she'd been involved, I think it was a car crash or something, and she had this terrible pain in her back. And she had x-rays. She'd had x-rays. She even had an MRI. Yeah. And they still could not find what the problem was in terms of the back pain. And she could tell where it was radiating from, but other than that, they couldn't tell her exactly what the root cause was. Yeah. So she went to a hypnotherapist who basically put her into a trance, but allowed her to travel inside her body to find out where this pain was and what it actually was, right? Okay. And in the course of this trance, she was actually able to locate the specific vertebrae that had actually splintered. Wow. And it couldn't be seen on the MRI.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, it was almost like a hairline crack, but there was a slight splinter in it. So she'd literally broken her back, but they couldn't see it. So with this information, she went to see her specialist and told him. And of course, you can imagine what the reaction was.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Keep taking the drugs, honey.
Yeah.
And he did listen to her, and he went back and did another examination, and sure enough, that vertebrae was damaged.
Wow.
So, yeah, it can be very... And that wasn't that long ago. It wasn't like in the 15th century or anything like that. That wasn't, a couple of years ago.
Yeah. But that just proves my point, that sometimes the hypnosis just takes the healing to another level. And whether it's healing or whether it's, like, if the police are using hypnosis with victims of crime, for example, or witnesses of crime, they will take them, because the hypnosis is literally just about the body getting into this uber relaxed state where they can totally focus on one thing and get information. Whereas when you're emotionally connected to an incident, that emotional connection may cloud your memory. Whereas once you're in that hypnotic state, everything becomes really super clear. You can remember the license or the registration plate of a car. You can remember the color or a logo, perhaps, on a t-shirt someone was wearing that was at the scene that you wouldn't have remembered otherwise. And all those details that are stored away, they're there because your brain took a snapshot and remembered. Yeah. And then it got locked away because your emotion, your reaction to that on the conscious level is clouding that memory. Whereas when you get into that, under those layers, and you start to bring it out, that's when the information becomes a lot more clear.
It's amazing, actually, how clever that, your subconscious is, because it does remember all of those details, but obviously it doesn't come to the conscious, so you're not aware of it. So trauma can be, definitely put away in a box mark later, because people don't want it to come to the fore, because and obviously information about murders and things like that, where people may have seen something but they weren't quite sure, and it this sounds funny because it's not actually hypnosis, but in psychology there's a specific type of term that they use. But if somebody got really drunk and did stuff while they were drunk, and then they wake up and they can't remember, and then they go back to being drunk, they may actually remember what they did in that previous drunk state, because it's the subconscious that's come through. So
well,
that's quite interesting. But it's that just shows you how clever the subconscious is.
Yes. It's like, just the facts, ma'am. Because that's what's there. There's nothing clouding it. It's just there. But moving on to Edgar Cayce, who in relation to what we're talking about with hypnosis, he actually was able to self-hypnotize.
Yes.
And this is how he got into his trance state. When he was in his trance state, he was then able to access what was called the Book of Knowledge, as it's referred to in the Bible, or the Akashic Records. That's A-K-A-S-H-I-C or K, depending on what country you're from. The Akashic Records is supposed to be the knowledge of everything that's ever happened and ever will happen. All that information is there. So he was very fortunate to be able to access that world of information. So when he was in the presence of someone who had an illness, who was sitting in the room with him, he would then go into the trance state. His ego would disappear. He would become like a third person. So instead of saying, I see this, he would say, we see this. And he would say, we are acknowledging the patient, or the subject in the room. We are now entering the body. That the patient has an issue with, say, just as an example, the left heart valve is not closing properly, which is causing the patient to, breathing issues or whatever. You got to keep it in perspective too of the time when he was alive, which was the late 1800s, early 1900s. So we didn't have the technology that we have now. So he was able to reveal information that was unheard of.
Can I say something there?
Yeah.
It's because the self-hypnosis takes a long time. If you do it, obviously he had somebody that recorded whatever you talked about. But just so there's a bit of clarity, you can't detach from the ego, so you can't shut that down.
Right. It's
because you go into the subconscious, but he would have gone into something far beyond that, because if he would have been stepping outside of the physical realm into the spiritual realm through his self-hypnosis. Right. So it would be more than just the subconscious.
Yeah.
get what I mean?
Yes, yeah,
that makes sense.
Yeah, yes. I probably didn't describe that correctly, but that's exactly right. Is he was because when we're in the spirit state, we are all connected up to the same thing, and I think that's the space that he was accessing initially, where that information was coming through. Because when he became quite famous, people were actually coming to him, obviously for a lot of different reasons, but one of the main ones, people would say, "Teach me how to do what you do."
Oh, yeah.
And he couldn't, because this was a wonderful gift that he was born with. And anyone like yourself who does have that ability as a medium, as a clairvoyant, whatever, you can learn how to meditate. You can learn how to, open up your intuition and become more spiritual and so forth. But unless you're actually born, obviously, with rhesus negative blood, which I'm pretty sure he would have had, he unfortunately, he said, "I can't teach you to do what I do, because I don't even know how I do what I do." When he was a very different person when he was in his waking state, because he never took money for what he did, because he was a very religious person. So he felt there was a moral issue there with, taking money because of this wonderful gift that God had given him. That's how he saw it. So
I think that's brilliant, though, that you could think like that, because there are too many people in this world who think that by using God's gifts that they can make a vast amount of money out of it. I mean, so what are you... I mean, I'm not saying you can't make money out of it, but what's your primary thing going on here? Is it to actually help somebody and earn a few spondoolies on the way? But is it all about becoming very wealthy? Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the thing.
But it's nice to hear that, though, Claudia.
Yeah, well, and he was. I would have loved to have met him, and maybe he's reincarnated and he's around now. I don't know, but he
could he come back as a woman?
Oh, he could.
Who could be short and got some
maybe he's
hair.
RuPaul. I don't know. Who knows? But
I got the boobies.
But a lot of people think, well, then how did he make money? Well, he was a photographer, and he was actually a very good photographer. He was a Pisces, so Pisceans quite often have a really good eye when it comes to anything creative. So he was very good at that. And look, he was not a wealthy man. He lived a very modest life, and he was very happily married. And I think he had like 3 kids, 3 boys. And but his life he still wasn't insanely famous. He was famous around the world. Internationally famous. So
he must have made some money in the end, though, because obviously there was that organisation we talked about in the last episode. He must have made a little bit of money to be able to give up the photography, so he could spend more time doing the
Well, are you talking about the Association of Research?
Yeah, but I was just thinking more about the hypnosis. He probably in his later years wouldn't he have given up doing the photography so he could really solely practice what he was doing, healing others.
One thing, he didn't earn the money, but he received a lot of donations. And there was actually a guy, I think his name was Goldberg, on Wall Street, became a really good friend of his because he actually bought the land where the Institute is in Virginia. He bought that for Cayce because he was so impressed with him as a human being. He just thought, you're the most amazing person I've ever met. This Goldberg guy, he was a huge cat on Wall Street, mega millions, and a lot of, so yeah, you're right. In the end, a lot of Cayce's funding did come from rich benefactors who sponsored what he was doing and just kept feeding money into the institution. So he obviously possibly drew a wage from that.
Oh, it's interesting you say about Goldberg, because I'm going to be talking about Dr. Bruce Goldberg next week.
Okay.
And he was into the hypnosis, so I wonder whether
there's a bit of a connection there. I don't know. I'll have to look that one up. I'm not 100% sure.
So
go ahead.
I was going to ask you, so he obviously helped to diagnose people and direct them, didn't he, to various places where they could actually find... Didn't you say something about the medication or herbal or...
Well, yeah, he was known as the father of holistic or homeopathic medicine because when he would go in a trance state into the Akashic records looking for cures for this particular patient, so he would link the two together. So he would look at the body first from a spiritual perspective.
Yeah.
Then he would go to the Akashic Records and he would source what the cure was